Good evening. I'm Tim Severin, the Director for Social Mission for Bellarmine Chapel. On behalf of our whole community, I welcome all of you, guests, students, and parishioners to tonight's gathering. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for being an important part of this effort to address a reality that at first glance surpasses our understanding, much less our ability to respond. Your presence here demonstrates that even when we face difficult challenges, it's never an option for us as members of a faith community simply to remain silent or shrug our shoulders. I also want to thank the many parishioners, Casa Hispanic Center, and the Youth Educating Society program of the Intercommunity Justice and Peace Center for helping organize this event, and Xavier University's mission animators for their support. So why are we here tonight? We're here to answer the title question, how do we welcome the stranger? How do we welcome the immigrant in our midst? Yeah, please be seated. Thank you. We're here to begin responding to the plight of more than 65.3 million people in our world who are the victims of forced displacement. Some of these people we see in the news fleeing from the violence in Syria or other parts of the Mideast, from years of bloodshed and climate disruption that have led families to painful conclusions that their only hope is to flee their home. Others we don't hear as much about, fleeing from political conflicts and even failed states in parts of Africa. They leave their homes reluctantly, knowing it's not easy to start over again in a foreign land. And still others, much closer to our home, are escaping from the Maras, organized gangs and drug cartels that control large areas of Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala. These families are literally running from extortion coupled with death threats. And these displaced persons then are not your typical immigrant families, not people who are free to migrate for school or for jobs using the formal green card and citizenship process. But neither do they necessarily meet the strict conditions for being classified as refugees or asylum seekers. Normally, for that to occur, the person has to demonstrate that they were victims of persecution on the basis of their race, religion, or politics, and within a certain time frame. While some of the displaced people who are arriving here from Central America are eligible for temporary protected status through our Department of Homeland Security, it's a costly and slow process that generally is not something people are able to navigate through. And that at present applies just to El Salvador and Honduras, so the large Guatemalan population in our city is not eligible for that. And yet they are victims of violence. The truth of the matter then is that these families arrive here miraculously without any official status of support. The fact that they even made it here is proof of their remarkable courage and resilience, proof of the passion they have for their children, and proof too of their enduring faith in God. And so the question remains, how do we respond? We'd like to begin with a prayer.
A reading from the Gospel of Matthew. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you?" The king will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these, my sisters and brothers, you did for me."
And this is an excerpt from Pope Francis's Misericordiae Vultus, which initiated the Year of Mercy. In this holy year, we look forward to the experience of opening our hearts to those living on the outermost fringes of society, fringes which modern society itself creates. How many uncertain and painful situations there are in the world today. How many are the wounds borne by the flesh of those who have no voice because their cry is muffled and drowned out by the indifference of the rich. During this Jubilee, the Church will be called even more to heal these wounds, to assuage them with the oil of consolation, to bind them with mercy, and cure them with solidarity and vigilant care. Let us not fall into humiliating indifference or a monotonous routine that prevents us from discovering what is new. Let us ward off destructive cynicism. Let us open our eyes and see the misery of the world, the wounds of our brothers and sisters who are denied their dignity, and let us recognize that we are compelled to heed their cry for help. May we reach out to them and support them so they can feel the warmth of our presence, our friendship, and our fraternity. May their cry become our own, and together may we break down the barriers of indifference that too often reign supreme and mask our hypocrisy and egoism.
Good evening to all of you. My name is Dan Hartnett. I'm one of the Jesuits here at Xavier University, and I'm the pastor here at Bellarmine Chapel. And as all of you know, Xavier University and Bellarmine Chapel are inspired by Ignatius Loyola. Of course, Robert Bellarmine was one of the earliest Jesuit professors at our first Roman college there in Rome. He also taught at a couple other places. Francis Xavier, as you know, whose name this university bears, was a missionary, really, and Ignatius Loyola was the founder of the Jesuits, and he made a tremendous impact on Xavier, on Bellarmine, on all of the first Jesuits. And one of the reasons, hopefully all of you at some point will get an opportunity to make the spiritual exercises of Ignatius Loyola, which are extremely transformative. But tonight, the spiritual exercises take about a month to make, so we won't hold you hostage tonight for a month, but we thought we would take you through a very brief methodology that's very Ignatian. It's based on basically 3 exercises, and we should learn them habitually whenever we're facing any problem in the world today. And it's to see, to judge, and act. So these are like 3 habits of reflection. It's of prayerful reflection and action that tend to lead to a transformative presence in the world. Let us talk about each one. First of all, to see. Of course, we all have eyes, but that doesn't mean necessarily that we see what's going on in our world. As I mentioned there, spirituality is really a disciplined way of perceiving what is real. Spirituality has everything to do with attention, everything to do with seeing. It involves attention to the real. And right seeing, as you probably know, is a pervasive theme all throughout Scripture and really all throughout all the religious traditions. If you're familiar, for example, with Buddhism, you know that right seeing is one of the steps of the Eightfold Path. Because we can only act correctly in a world in which we truly see. If we don't see rightly, we're not likely to judge rightly and less likely to act rightly. In the spiritual exercises, then, Ignatius trains us during the course of a month, or if you make them in another 19th annotation mode, over 30 weeks, he trains one to see, especially to see in the way that Jesus would see, to see the world through the eyes of Jesus. That's why he has the person making the exercises actually become a contemporary of Christ, and to go to Nazareth and Galilee and Jerusalem, to all these different places, and to see people suffering, and to watch how Jesus addresses, reaches out to, connects with, and heals the people that he meets. And as one watches Jesus act, one gradually is transformed into that way of seeing. In fact, even before doing so, Ignatius asks us to imagine the Trinity, gazing down compassionately at our world where there's so much suffering as a result of war and poverty, and Jesus then is their response. Jesus is the compassion of God for Ignatius. So this evening, we're going to be pondering images of people who are suffering forced displacement that Tim described just a minute before. And we'll be hearing some stories of people who have been displaced. And we want to really appropriate that and make their stories our own. We want to step in their shoes, as it were. As we watch these, as we hear these, see these images and hear these stories, we'll see both, hopefully, notice their suffering and experience compassion, but also their courage and their hope. Let us allow then these images and these stories into our hearts. So that's the first exercise, and it's so important to see prayerfully, contemplatively. Secondly, to judge. After we see, we have to ponder, we have to judge, we have to arrive at some judgments, right, about what we just saw. And as I say here, we never do so with a blank slate. We never do so tabula rasa, as it were. We think we are. We think our observance of the world is dispassionate, is completely objective, but it's not. We're already imbued with what Charles Taylor, a philosopher, calls the cultural imaginary of our world. We live in a cultural imaginary which would be like a market imaginary, right? The ancient Greeks lived in a different cultural imaginary. Jesus lived in a different cultural imaginary. Ignatius Loyola lived in one. So what is a cultural imaginary? Well, it means it includes the assumptions, the tacit understandings, and the common sense of our period, of our age. And we've all imbued that common sense. In a sense, we have to in order to survive. But this also applies, it also is true when it comes to immigration or our attitude towards borders. Many of the narratives that we hear in the news about immigration are blatantly false. And they really only serve to obscure the fact that, especially for the poor, immigration is really a very costly, painful, and traumatic experience. But this can tell us how desperate the migrants' choices are. They have to weigh the risks of death at home, say in Honduras, where Miriam is from, or in the dangers of coming up all the way through Mexico to here, or to make the Odyssey, right? They have to make that, that's the wager. That's the decision that they have to make. So we want to kind of put ourselves in their shoes this evening. And while the U.S. spends billions to try to stem the flow of immigrants on walls, on security systems, and on this Plan Frontera Sur, which is what our government recently has done when it's seeing so many people arriving at our borders, we've been giving money to the Mexican government so that they could stop the immigrants at the Guatemala-Mexican border. And while it's true that our country is somewhat divided over this entire issue, Americans support principles of sensible immigration reform. A recent polling from a Pew report just indicated that over 60% of the country believe that immigrants really strengthen the country. Only 33% view our immigrants as a burden. So now to act. What can we do? As Tim mentioned at the beginning, we're facing a huge problem. There's something like 65.3 people who are involved in forced displacement, whether it be in Syria or coming out of Africa or coming out of Central America. Sometimes when we see a problem that's so huge, we can simply say there's nothing we can do about it. And so we're tempted to be paralyzed and simply to become hopeless. But that's not the case. We want to take a look tonight then on what we can do. It's always wise for us to ponder what we can do, and also wise for us to ponder how we can do it. The how is as important as the what. So before embracing a course of action, though, it helps to recognize our gifts and limitations, because maybe as students here at Xavier or as parishioners at Bellarmine, there's some things we can do that somebody else who's living, say, on the border between Haiti and Dominican Republic, they would respond differently. They have a different set of circumstances. So I want to reflect with you just briefly on this transformative process of promoting justice. As Jesuits over the last 50 years or so, we've been thinking a lot about the relationship between faith and justice, and we've realized that it involves many parts or pieces. There's many ways to promote justice. One is to accompany. Our parishes tend to do that very well. Another way is direct service. Another way is research. Our universities tend to be very strong on this. Education, our schools, high schools, and universities are strong in this. And then we all have to work on advocacy. So what we've come to see is really the process of working for justice involves each one of these steps. And maybe none of us can do all 5 of those, but all of us can do one of them. And so we can maybe reflect for a little bit on each one of these steps. What would be involved? I just want to kind of do a little bit of a spectrum or a map for you, typology, so that when you get together in small groups and do your private prayer as well, you can have some ideas about how we might respond to this huge problem that at first glance surpasses our understanding. Okay? So what would accompany? Just some of the actions that come with accompaniment. Well, prayer. We've already begun that tonight by praying for people. And tomorrow night we're going to have a Taizé service, again with the theme of hospitality. So prayer is important because prayer is really transformative. Presence, to be simply friends with, to befriend, to walk with these immigrants in our midst, to be their companions is extremely important. And sharing their stories. Tonight we'll be hearing some of their stories. They will hear ours as well. So that accompaniment is extremely important. But then also we want to we can provide service. We could do direct financial support. A university or a parish can take up collections. We could support families, say at St. Leo's Parish where we have many immigrants living there. We could connect them with larger networks here in our city. Often they're not familiar with the different networks that would help them to kind of maneuver through the system in our country. Learn some basic skills like ESL, could be a very important thing to do some language study, language teaching. Provide some legal support. We have I see 3 or 4 lawyers here. There's a lot of things we could do in terms of providing legal support to help them to get their temporary protective status and things of that sort. Research is also very important, and at the universities do a lot to identify the causes. What are the causes? Why are so many people forced to come to this country? And how could we address those originating causes? Whether it be in Honduras, El Salvador, wherever it is. And then start imagining alternatives. So we're talking about a research that matters, a research with those who are affected and for those in need. No, not a research simply to get publications for my tenure, but really research that really transforms and makes our world a home for all. And then education, once we've done all of this, once we've accompanied people, once we've gotten to know them through service and research, then education becomes very important. And all of us participate in different venues where we can contribute to changing the dominant narrative in our country, which is often a negative narrative concerning immigrants, to sort of change that hostile narrative to a more welcoming one. All of us can reach different publics. You know, each one of us has a certain social capital, so we should ask ourselves, what groups can we reach? And develop a vision of the common good, which is something that we've often lost, I think, in the world today, a vision of the common good. You know, one that's beyond the limits of borders, but what's the common good for our humanity? And then finally, advocacy becomes extremely important. We really have to work together for, there's all sorts of things we can do together. Like, for example, just a few examples, driver's license. You know, there's several states that provide driver's license, even for people who are not, do not enjoy full citizenship. The police department approves it. Insurance companies prefer it. It's kind of a win-win for everybody for there to be driver's license, and it serves as a mode of identification. That's something we don't have here in Ohio, but it's something we could work for. And as I mentioned before, it's kind of in the context of legal support, we could assist people with the temporary protection status. Those are just examples. Obviously, for advocacy, it's good to work for comprehensive immigration reform, but sometimes it's important to break down these huge problems into concrete issues that we can work on, because then we tend to be more effective. So this isn't meant to be kind of a task list for you, but it's meant to just kind of create a broad set of options. But again, what's important is that each person with his or her gifts would say, well, this is something I feel I could do, teach language, right? Everybody, in accordance with their gifts, could determine where maybe they would be inclined to work, okay?
Hi, everybody. Good evening. My name is Miriam Zelaya. My from is Honduras. I want to my share story. Yo vine a Estados Unidos del 2003 al
I've been
2009.
in the United States 2003, 2009.
La razón por la cual yo me vine
The reason I had come back to Honduras
fue la economía.
was the economy.
Vengo de una familia muy grande.
I'm from a big family.
Somos 9
We're 9 of us.
y nos quedamos huérfanos muy chicos de papá.
We were young orphans, very small.
Y por eso yo tuve que venirme para trabajar y poder ayudar a mis hermanos.
That's why I had to come here to help my brothers, my sisters.
Cuando reuní un poco de dinero,
When I came here, I was able to put together some money,
me regresé a Honduras.
and then I went back to Honduras.
Con el dinero que llevaba,
With
comencé a poner una venta de ropa de hombre.
With the money that I had when I went back to Honduras, I organized a small store for clothing, men's clothing,
Y me iba muy bien.
and it went very well for me.
Y decidí poner una pequeña tienda.
And I decided to organize a small store,
Y lo hice.
and I did it.
Los primeros 3 meses me fue muy bien.
First 3 months of this store, it went really well.
Pero una mañana acababa de abrir mi negocio
And then one morning when I opened my store,
cuando mi teléfono sonó.
my telephone began ringing.
Yo contesté porque creí que era un cliente,
I answered it. I thought it might be a client,
pero no era así.
and it wasn't.
Me habló una voz de hombre
It was a voice, a man's voice.
y me dijo, ¿con la señora Miriam?
He said, I would like to speak with Senora Miriam.
Yo le dije sí.
And I said, yes.
Le estamos llamando de una organización
I'm calling from a particular organization,
de la Mara 18.
La Mara 18.
Le estamos llamando porque necesitamos que usted nos dé una cuota semanal
I'm calling you because we are demanding that you pay us this weekly quota of $150.
Cuando yo escuché la llamada, me quedé muda
When I listened to this call, I was mute. I couldn't say a thing.
porque toda la gente sabe cuando uno recibe una llamada de esas.
Because everybody from Honduras knows what's happening when you receive a call like this.
La voz siguió hablando
The voice continued talking.
y me dijo que llegáramos a un acuerdo por las buenas,
He said that we needed to come to an agreement,
que les colaborara,
that I had to collaborate,
y si no colaboraba me iban a mandar las orejas de mi hijo en una caja
and if I wasn't going to collaborate, I was going to send me the ears of my son in a small box.
Yo sentí tanto miedo
I was really scared.
que no pude continuar hablando.
I wasn't able to talk.
Me dijo que no fuera a poner la denuncia
He said, don't fool me,
porque ellos tenían personas trabajando dentro de la policía
because he told me not to make a police report because he said we have people with the police who are working there.
y que automáticamente estaría firmando mi sentencia de muerte.
And he said automatically I would already be signing my sentence for death.
Yo colgué el teléfono
I hung up.
y llamé a mi hermana.
I called my sister.
Ella rápidamente llegó por mí
She quickly came
y me dijo que pusiéramos la denuncia.
and she told me to let's go and make a report.
Al fin ella me convenció
She convinced me
y yo fui a poner la denuncia.
and I fue and I made this report.
Cuando yo estaba saliendo del departamento de policía,
When I was going out of the police department,
mi teléfono comenzó
my
a sonar.
telephone sounded again.
El oficial asignado a mi caso, el detective,
A detective, he was carrying me, he was accompanying me.
me dijo que lo contestara.
He told me, you know, answer it.
Yo lo contesté
So I answered it.
y nuevamente eran ellos.
And once again, it
Me
was a
dijeron,
man's voice.
Te dijimos que no pusieras la
He
denuncia.
said, I told you not to answer it. I told you not to make a police report.
Y nosotros no jugamos.
We don't play.
Vas a morir, perra.
You're gonna die, you dog.
Yo sabía
I left.
que estaba en graves problemas. Le pedí ayuda a mis hermanos, mis 8 hermanos,
And I asked my 8 brothers and sisters,
y me dijeron no.
I asked if they would give me a place to stay, and they all said no.
Tenían mucho miedo,
I was really scared.
porque en nuestros países,
In our country,
si usted ayuda a alguien que tiene problemas con las maras,
if you are connected with somebody who has problems with the Mara,
y lo logran atrapar en alguna casa,
and they are able to catch you,
mueren todos los que están ahí. Mueren todos.
and if you don't give them what they want you to give them, you die and the family dies.
Yo no sabía qué hacer
I didn't know what to do.
hasta que hablé con mi mejor amigo.
I went and I talked with my best friend.
Él me dijo que no tenía miedo.
He said, look, I'm not scared.
Puedes venirte a mi casa.
You and your son can come to my house.
Me fui con mi hijo para la casa de él
We went to his house.
y estuvimos ahí durante 2 años
We stayed there for 2 years
sin salir de esa casa.
without even leaving.
Durante esos 2 años no supe más de ellos.
During those years, I didn't know what was going on.
Pero mi hijo necesitaba ir a la escuela
But the thing is, my son, he needed to go to school.
y decidí salir nuevamente.
So I decided I had to leave.
Cambié mi número
I changed my telephone number
y me fui lejos de donde mi amigo vivía.
and I left. I left quite a ways from where my friend had been living or where he was living.
Y comencé a rehacer mi vida.
And I began to live in another part.
Los primeros 3 meses
First 3 months I was living there.
pudimos vivir pacíficamente,
We were living very peacefully.
pero un domingo
One Sunday
por la tarde,
in the afternoon,
mi nuevo teléfono
my telephone rang again.
sonó. Lo contesté
I answered it,
y eran ellos.
and it was Mara. It was a man's voice.
Me dijeron, ¿creíste que te habías escapado?
You thought you had escaped.
Estamos aquí afuera.
We're here outside of your house.
Venimos por ti.
We came here for you.
Hoy vas a morir.
Hoy, today, you're going to die.
¿Puedes ver a través de la ventana?
You can look through the window.
Estamos afuera.
We're right here. We're outside.
Yo no tuve valor de hacerlo
I wasn't strong enough to even to look out the window.
y llamé a mi vecina.
And so I called my neighbor.
Le dije que si podía ver afuera para ver si era cierto.
I asked her if she'd look outside to see if that was really true.
Y ella dijo que sí.
And she said yes.
Que habían 4 hombres
There's 4 men out there,
en motocicletas
motorcycles,
con armas grandes
with long guns
y poderosas.
and very powerful.
Nunca en mi vida
Never in my life
había sentido tanto miedo.
had I really felt so scared.
Sabía que iba a morir.
What?
Sabía que iba a morir.
I knew I was going to die.
Comencé a orarle a
Began
Dios
to talk to God
y a la Virgen.
and pray to the Virgin.
Abracé fuerte a mi hijo.
I hugged my son very strongly.
No podía parar de llorar
I could even breathe.
y les pedí que me iluminaran. Que me iluminaran. Que me dieran una oportunidad para vivir.
I prayed so that God would give me another chance to live or give me a chance to continue living.
Y ellos me escucharon.
And they listened to me, God and the Virgin.
Vino a mi mente
Came to my mind,
mi cuñado,
my son-in-law,
que es
my
policía,
brother-in-law,
que es policía.
que es un policía.
Lo llamé,
I called him,
le conté lo que estaba pasando
and he was working.
y él rápidamente llegó
He said he would be right there. He
Con
came in
un-
about 10 minutes
con un grupo de 12 policías.
with a group of 12 policemen.
Cuando los mareros miraron eso,
When los mareros saw this,
salieron corriendo
they left running.
y yo aproveché
So I took advantage of this moment
para escapar.
to get out of there.
Esa misma noche
That same night,
tomé la decisión
I decided
de regresar acá.
to return to the United States.
Necesitaba escapar por nuestras vidas.
I decided to once again come here and live
Sin despedirme de nadie,
without saying goodbye to anybody in Honduras.
esa misma noche
The same night,
mi cuñado me puso en la frontera
my brother-in-law put me on the frontier.
y comenzamos
And
un
we-
viaje muy difícil.
And we began a trip, a long, long journey, very difficult.
Pasamos tantas cosas.
We went through a lot of things.
Caminamos mucho,
We walked a whole lot.
bebimos agua de del piso, agua, charcos.
Siga, siga.
Y al fin logramos llegar.
It took us a long time, but we came. We got here to the United States. We arrived.
Cuando entramos a Estados Unidos,
When we entered the United States,
nos atrapó migración.
they caught us.
Me pusieron un grillete muy grande en el pie.
They put a monitor on our feet. She said it was really big.
Y estuvimos 7 días presos.
We were in prison for 7 days.
Y luego de unos días
And then we were able to get out.
logramos llegar a Florida.
And we made it to Florida.
Llegamos a casa de un primo.
We arrived at a house where my cousin lives.
Pero él estaba muy enfermo, tenía
But
cáncer.
unfortunately, he was really sick.
Tenía
He
cáncer.
had cancer.
Y el doctor dijo
And his doctor told him
que él tenía que estar solo.
he had to be by himself.
Y yo me puse en contacto con unas amigas
So I put myself in contact with some relatives
y me vine para
in
Ohio.
Ohio.
Hablé con migración
I talked with the immigration.
y les dejé todos mis datos.
I gave them all of my information.
Ellos dijeron que iban a trasladar mi caso para acá.
And they said they would transfer my case to Ohio,
Pero nunca lo hicieron.
but they never did it.
Tuve corte en Miami
I had my court in Miami,
y me di cuenta 3 días antes.
and I only knew about it 3 days before it was going to happen.
Por el tiempo
Because of time
y por el dinero
and because of money,
no pude viajar.
there was no way I could travel.
Y el juez me puso deportación en ausencia.
So the judge gave me an order of deportation.
Tenía miedo otra vez aquí. No quería salir,
I didn't want to leave.
tenía mucho miedo.
I was really scared. I didn't want to go back home. I didn't want to go back to Honduras.
Pero el abogado Martínez
But lawyer Martinez, Jorge Martinez,
logró reabrir mi caso
he was able to get my case reopened.
y se dio cuenta
And at the same time,
que cuando yo estuve por primera vez,
he found that I had possibility of another.
tuve un caso de violencia
I
doméstica
had a case when I was here before of domestic violence. It was pending. Never went through with it because I had gone back to Honduras.
y ahora el 5 de septiembre,
So
octubre,
right now, the 5th of September,
tengo corte por los 2 casos.
I have a court hearing with those 2 cases, domestic violence and asylum.
Y nuevamente tengo miedo
And once again, I'm really scared.
por la decisión que pueda tomar el juez.
I'm scared about what the decision the judge might make.
No ha terminado todo.
I haven't, not everything has been finished.
Me vine de mi país escapando de la muerte.
I came here trying to escape death.
Estoy lejos, pero el Amara sigue trabajando.
I'm very far, and the Mara is working.
Cuando yo tenía 5 meses de estar acá en Ohio,
When I what?
cuando yo tenía 5 meses de estar,
Oh, when I had been here for about 5 months
de estar aquí en Ohio,
in Ohio,
mi amigo, mi mejor amigo,
my best friend from Honduras who had offered me hospitality,
el único que me brindó ayuda,
the only one that had helped me,
iba llegando una tarde a su casa
one day he was arriving back home
con 2 amigos más.
with 2 other friends.
Apenas bajó del carro,
He barely got out of his car.
Llegaron los mareros.
and the Moreos arrived.
Querían información mía. Querían información.
And they wanted information from him about me,
Y él no les dio
and he
información.
didn't give him any information.
Y los mataron.
They killed him.
Le dieron 40 disparos.
They shot him 40 times.
Instantáneamente murieron los 3. Se fue. No pude decirle gracias.
¿Qué?
No pude decirle gracias.
Sí, sí.
No pude decirle gracias a mi amigo.
I could never tell my friend thank you.
Y no pude pagarle el dinero que me prestó para venirme.
I couldn't pay him nothing back that he had loaned me, he had given me.
Y la culpabilidad me atormenta.
His death was my fault.
Ahora,
Now,
hace como 2 meses,
2 months ago,
llegaron a la casa donde vive mi mamá.
the Morero arrived at my mother's house, where she lives right now,
Tocaron la puerta
and she didn't answer the door.
y cuando ella los miró con las armas,
Well, when she saw them with their arms, with their guns,
no lo resistió y sufrió un infarto.
and she couldn't stand it. She had a heart attack.
Pero gracias a Dios ella está recuperando.
But thanks be to God, she's recuperating.
Pero hemos tenido que moverla 2 veces en un mes, cambiarla de ciudades.
This happened to her a couple times in 1 month, and she's had to change living where she was to a different city.
Es muy difícil para nosotros los inmigrantes.
It's very difficult for us,
Y hablo por la mayoría de los inmigrantes.
and I'm speaking for the majority of immigrants.
Nosotros solo estamos escapando de la violencia.
What?
Estamos escapando de la violencia.
We aren't able to deal with this violence,
Que hay en cada país centroamericano.
which is in every country in Central America.
Por ese motivo nosotros estamos acá,
Because of this, we're coming here,
escapando por nuestras vidas.
escaping this.
Pero cuando uno llega acá se encuentra también con muchas dificultades.
But when we do get here, and we are here, there's a whole lot of difficulties.
Empezando con el idioma.
Getting with the language.
Muchas veces lo discriminan.
Which, okay?
Lo discriminan.
Many times we're discriminated against.
No contamos con Medicaid.
We don't have Medicaid insurance.
No podemos manejar ni trabajar legalmente.
We can't drive or work legally.
Yo limpio casas ahora.
I'm cleaning houses right now.
Un poco de casa.
It's a little bit of money.
Financieramente vivo día a día.
Financieramente, ¿qué?
Vivo día a día.
Financially, I'm living day to day,
Pero le doy gracias a Dios,
but I thank God.
a Caridades Católicas,
Thank God for Catholic Charities,
a su casa,
Su Casa,
a San Vicente de Paul,
St. Vincent de Paul,
a la señora Elizabeth y el señor Tim,
Mrs. Elizabeth y Mr. Tim,
a Margaret Singer, a Giovanna, porque no tengo familia acá, no tengo a nadie, solo mi hijo.
I don't really have any family here. You know, I just have my son.
Pero todas ellas han sido mi familia.
But all of you have been my family
Y mi apoyo.
and support.
Y les pido a todos los que están aquí hoy
And I ask all of you that are here today,
que si pueden,
if you can,
apoyen,
support,
ayuden
help,
y escuchen
and please listen
a mis hermanos refugiados.
to my brothers and sisters refugees, my brother and sister refugees,
Porque los emigrantes son unos guerreros. Los emigrantes
because immigrants,
son muy valientes.
we're very courageous. We're very courageous
Porque no es fácil
because it's not easy
dejar sus familias
to leave your families
sin despedirse,
without saying anything like goodbye.
sin darles un abrazo.
Okay.
Gracias por la atención
Thank you for your attention.
y buenas noches.
Thank you.
Dios.
Well, that's going to be tough to follow. So, my name is Jose Cabrera, and I'm going to tell you my story. See, when I was a little boy, living in Mexico, Veracruz, in a small village with the population of 400, we had this thing come into our country called NAFTA. And it dried our economy sucked. It left my family poor, my parents newlywed with just a baby boy, me, lived in a small little shack with one bed, a fireplace, and a bucket. And unfortunately, I was born with a lot of complications and I had to be in the hospital once a week in order for me to breathe normally. As time went on, about 4 years of doing that once a week, the bills started piling up on us. So then my father, what any man, any poor man in Mexico would do, he came to the US with the hopes that he would send money back and we would have a house and eventually he could come back and live this happily ever after. But that didn't happen. He then returned and told my mom that he wanted to bring me and her to the United States. He said that I would have a better future here, that I could go to a better hospital, that I could go to school. So my mom decided to come. And at the age of 4, I had to cross the border. We were in this white GM van, and there was about 7 of us in this van. And we were going through these back roads, and it was a long day from going from Veracruz all the way to, I think it was Tijuana. And I remember it was late at night, and I was kind of falling asleep, and then I was awakened by the tires hitting the gravel on the road. It was the loudest thing ever. And then the driver's door opened, the lights turned on the car, and everyone got out. And my mom, it was a cold night, so my mom, when she walked out, she was carrying me in this blue blanket that my aunt had bought me before we came. It's like a little baby Mickey Mouse blanket that I still have, actually. And she was holding me. And from a distance, about to where you are, I saw the coyote and my father, and they were talking. And then I saw my father reach into his pocket and hand him some money. They shook hands and they walked towards us. When my mom saw this, she squeezed me. And I got scared. Next thing I know, he's right in front of me. And he reaches out and pulls me away from my mother's arm. And at that moment, I'm kicking, I'm screaming, I'm yelling. And I look at my mom, and she turns around, and I can hear her cry. And I paused, and I thought, shoot, she just sold me. I lived 4 days and 3 nights without my mother. The first time in my whole life. But then we were reunited. We were back, we were in the United States, and the coyote gave me to my mom, and I was happy. And then my family got settled in. My father got a job in construction. Actually, he was one of the very first men to actually build the Bengal Stadium, Paul Brown. We have pictures of him standing in the field after they put the grass. And then my mom gave birth to 2 little girls, my sisters. But then when I was 8, my father walked out on me, my mom, and my 2 US-born sisters. My mom, from the moment we came to the United States, from that moment, she never stepped foot out of the kitchen. She didn't know we had to pay bills, what bills we had to pay, where we had to pay them. She didn't even know where she could get a job. So because of that, we were evicted from our home and we were homeless. We were couch surfing. We would sleep from one house, from a friend to another for about a year until my mom was able to make enough money selling traditional Mexican food to construction workers who would work, for a very long distance, and selling beauty projects like cologne, makeup, and all that, to put down enough money for a 1 small bedroom apartment right on Dana. The street's called Clarion, so if you ever walk into UDF, you'll see it right there. As that was happening, I was confused why all this was going on. And if you don't know it, that side is Evanston, one of the roughest neighborhoods in Cincinnati. And I remember going to school one day, and this kid comes up to me at recess, and he tells me, "What hood you from?" And that's when I realized, in order for me to survive in that environment, in the environment I was living, I had to join a gang. So I started getting in trouble at home, at school, and kind of close to the law. I was in the Big Brother and Big Sisters program. My mom signed me up. And if you don't know about it, what you do is you get a mentor, and he takes you out on the weekends. And so I got a big brother. His name was David. And David lived in Hyde Park. And if you're not from Cincinnati, Hyde Park is one of the kind of high middle class areas. And one day, David called me up and says, "Hey man, could you give me a hand clean my yard? My wife gave me a big list and I don't think I'll be able to get done with it tonight." And I said, "Sure." At that point, I never seen David's house. So as we were driving by, I saw how it was so different. The grass was greener, the streets were cleaner. people would walk around, they would walk in their dogs. You would be driving and people would just wave to you and he would wave and beep and say hi. And then when we got to his house, for a little kid who grew up in a small little shack in Mexico and then in a small one-bedroom apartment, his house seems like a mansion to me. And then he did something that really bothered me. We walked out, he closed his door, he left his windows down, and he didn't lock it. See, in my neighborhood, if you didn't lock your doors and you left your windows out, your car is going to be gone. As the years went on, David introduced me into a new world. He helped a kid who, his freshman year of high school, couldn't read and couldn't write, and didn't know basic math. And whose teachers told him that he's dyslexic, he can't read, he can't write, and his friends are gang members. They just gave up on me. But 4 years later, I was walking across my cap and gown with a 3.6 GPA and first honors all through high school, and was accepted to Xavier University, and had enough scholarships, that academic scholarships actually, that my freshman year I didn't pay a dime to Xavier. Right now I'm in my third year. I'm a junior studying a double major in entrepreneurship and management with a minor in justice and peace studies. And I also work for the Intercommunity Justice and Peace Center. I'm the immigration program organizer. And I've been doing immigration work for about 8 years. And I've really I've heard and seen stories of my community, similar to mine's, scary similar, and even different and rough, like we heard before me. This new wave of migration, remember as I told you, at that time, it was the wave of migration were all workers because of NAFTA that came to Latin America and just suck our economy dry. Now, it's all of the violence that's going on in Central America, of MS-13, 18th Street, 2 local gangs that was started in LA are now down there and are battling just as they're battling in LA, and even in Dayton. And why are they there? Because we deported them there. We deported those gang members, and now they started appearing there. Now I don't want to talk about, many immigration activists, people say that, they say no walls and stop deporting people, but there's an effect to it. Now I'm not going to tell you don't deport people, I'm not going to tell you don't build a wall, but I'm going to tell you, as a Xavier student, we're always considered to be smarter than everyone else, right? And how many business majors are here? Raise your hand. All right, so you guys know about investments, right? Invest, stock, and all that, right? Nod your heads. Nod your heads, yeah? Okay. So when you put money into an investment, you're supposed to get a dividend back, right? Look at her. So imagine me, a DACA student who deferred action for childhood arrival, or a dreamer, goes to university, 4 years, gets his MBA, and then is out there trying to look for a job. But he can't work because he doesn't have that social security number. So then what do? I have to go to another country. So education is like investing. This country invests into us. And then the dividends, the return that this country expects from us is that we stay here and we provide jobs and opportunities for others. But then we have to go to somewhere else. And you might think that's a little silly because how many how many undocumented students, how many DACA students are going to college? Not a lot. But the ones that do, they go to Harvard, they go to Yale. Actually, Yes is co-sponsoring, and they should be wrapping up with their meeting right now. And one of our advisory board members, Pass, she just graduated at NKU, and she's going to get her master's, or she's going to Harvard Medical School. We've seen the struggle, we know it. That's why we work harder. And I'm not saying neither do you. We all work hard. And we all just want the same rights. We want to be able to work, to provide for our families, to live a better life. Building a border is not going to stop that. People are still going to come here because it's a need. We heard a story of a woman a few minutes ago who she had two choices, either die in Honduras or risk her life coming here. That border, you can build how tall, you can put alligators around, we're still going to get across because people want to live. And there are people who have died, and people know this. I've heard stories of girls who say, I know I'm going to get raped in the border, but I'd rather get raped than die in my country. Deporting people back isn't going to mean they're not going to come back. If you haven't heard, there's been many raids this year. In the beginning of this year, in February, they detained around 120 people. And then they stopped all these raids because they saw a decrease in migration. And so they stopped the raids, but then they saw more people coming in. And so they started the raids again. And why? Those are the same people they deported back. Did they ever think of that? So, as a student here, I ask you, please, think of this presidential election. Think of what's being said. Think of what's being doing to people like us. And as students, and as people here who are very well educated, go out there and look at the issues. Don't just take everything we said here. And make your own opinion about this issue. And thank you.